I'll call to order the Regional Council meeting for April the 26th. All those are present except Councillor Yanika, Councillor Medeiros, and Councillor Raz is on a personal matter. This past Monday afternoon, we were all deeply saddened with the devastating news of a senseless attack that occurred in Toronto. On behalf of Council, our deepest heartfelt condolences to the recent victims and their families of this horrific, deadly tragedy. And certainly our thoughts and prayers are with all of you. I would now ask, if you are able, to please stand as we observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Stay strong, Toronto. Stay strong, Ontario. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Seeing none then, approval of the minutes of the April 12, 2018 Regional Council meeting. Moved by Mayor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Cook. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Approval of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Shaughnessy, seconded by Councillor Kovac, that the agenda for the April 26, 2018 Regional Council meeting include a communication from Malone Given Parsons Limited on behalf of the Building Industry and Land Development Association, known as BUILD, regarding the growth management reports listed as items 8.1 to 8.5, inclusive on the April 26, 2018 agenda, to be dealt with under items related to growth management, item 9.8. And further, that the agenda for the April 26, 2018 Regional Council meeting be approved. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. That moves us right into delegations.
No.
Oh, no.
Agenda.
Sorry? Oh.
Consent agenda.
Oh, the consent. That's right. I forgot we kept moving that forward. Yeah, we'll go through them. I guess we'll start on 9, or 10, I guess, because the rest are all related to growth management. So on the consent agenda then, we'll start with 10.1 is a presentation, so that'll stay. 10.2, consent then. 10.3. Consent 10.4, consent 10.5, consent 10.6, consent 11.1, consent 11.2, consent moves us to items related to public works. 12.1. Consent 12.2, consent 12.3, consent 12.4. We have a delegation, so I would hold that. 12.5, consent. Communications 13.1 and 13.2. I guess we'll bring them forward with the delegation. So 13.3, consent, moves us to health. 14.1. Yes. Okay. 14.1 and 14.2, Councillor Sprovieri? Yes, please. Okay. 14.3, consent. 14.4, consent. 15.1, consent. 16.1 under human services. We'll bring that forward with the delegation as well. 16.2 then. Consent. 16.3. We have consent. And I guess that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right.
We just need a mover and a seconder. Oh, wait.
Do you have the?
Want a pen?
Mayor Thompson, you move this? Would you move the consent agenda then? Okay. Councillor Sproviaria, would you second it? The consent agenda? Okay. Moved by Mayor Thompson, then seconded by Councillor Sproviaria that the following matters listed on the April 26, 2018 Regional Council agenda be approved under consent agenda. Do you have? And a recorded vote, please. And that carries. Thank you. All right, delegations. Okay, our first delegation this morning is Shelley White, Board Chair, and Margot Hunniset, Vice Chair of the Community Door Services Network. And this is related to item 16.1 in your agenda, providing an update regarding the Community Door initiatives. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Dale and members of Council and CAO David Swark and Region Appeal staff. It is indeed a pleasure to be back at Regional Council, although I must say it's a bit weird being here not as the CEO of the United Way, but I'm sure I'll find a couple of ways to insert United Way into the presentation. But it is indeed an honor and pleasure for Margot and I and members of the board and staff of the Community Door to be here. This is a really important and exciting initiative in our community. We are here to say thank you and also to provide you an update that will accompany the reports that are in your packages. So there is a Community Door presentation, PowerPoint, that you've been sent, and I know that's a supplement to the report that Janice Sheehy has also provided to you as well. With me, so Margot Hunniset is the Vice Chair of the Community Door Board of Directors. Margot, maybe you could tell the group a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. As Shelley has said, my name is Margot Hunniset. I'm currently the Vice Chair of Community Door, but I've been involved with Community Door in a number of capacities over the years, but most particularly the last 2 years as a board member. And I am very proud and happy to be part of this organization because I really believe that it is part of the future of how we deliver human services in a better and more effective way for the people who need them. I am the Vice President of Marketing and Communications for Bunzl Canada, and I work with Shelley to hopefully move our organization forward in the best way possible.
Yeah. And we're both residents of the Region of Peel, as are our board members and staff. So we have a few of our board members and our staff person here with us. So our Community Door Operations Manager is Barb McKenzie. And we have our treasurer, Christine Moore. Jackie Strawn is sitting beside Barb. In the back, we have Merv Hillier. Our consultant, Bob Cranch, who's been working with the Community Door since its inception in 2009. Corinne Strong, whom you all know as the Executive Director of Volunteer Peel. So we're delighted to be here. So as a result of the funding that the region provided to us, the $500,000, and we're going to report on that, the purpose of the funding was to actually help us to develop a plan and implement strategies and tactics to improve the effectiveness and efficiency of the Community Door. And so we actually did have a staff person who was assisting us with this. Unfortunately, he became quite ill and incapacitated, and so we actually put out an RFP, and as a result, hired Bob Cranch and Steve Gottdank to actually assist us with the development of the strategy and plan. Following the development of those plans, which were completed in December of 2017, the board had 2 workshops, one in January and one in February, to actually take the results of those plans and determine our next steps. As a result of the January meeting, what is before you is the vision of what the Community Door Board developed in terms of the Community Door's purpose is to build the capacity, the accessibility, and the quality of human services in Peel Region. Now, I know that is the role of the Region of Peel in terms of human services as well, but we are partners in that work moving forward. And I'm going to tell you, Margot and I are going to tell you a little bit about the work that we've done over the course of the past few years and how we're actually achieving this, and also what our plans are for the future moving forward. So it was established in 2011. We have, as you see, a board of directors. This initiative is really led by the board, and we have 1 part-time staff person. It is a startup. We've received tremendous support from the region, and I really would like to acknowledge Janice Sheehy, Sonia Pace, and Melissa Tomey for their tremendous support in this process. We'd also like to thank the region for providing us with up to $1 million in funding in 2015, of which we actually used $500,000. The funding was provided to provide us with opportunities to look at income generation, cost-saving opportunities, financial management, and operational oversight, so that we could create a thriving, sustainable human services hub in our community. And we've made significant progress as a startup, but without a doubt, the board and the staff, we believe we have a lot more work to do to achieve our ultimate mission and vision. So between 2016 and 18, Council did approve an extension of the funding that we did receive, because we did have some challenges with respect to the implementation. We underestimated how much time things would take as a startup with just a small board of directors and a staff person. We also underestimated the impact. Really, community hubs, what we've learned, are really a new initiative. It's a new way of doing business. There's not a lot of expertise out there with respect to community hubs, and so we're learning as we go. And when you're learning, it takes longer. And so that's another reason why things have taken us a bit longer in terms of moving forward. So we did hire a strategist, but as I said, they were not able to continue beyond December due to some significant health issues. We have worked on improving our client service, and I think that Barb McKenzie has really done excellent work with respect to that. We are working on increasing service integration between the 11 agencies that are part of the Community Door. And certainly focused on tenant retention. We want to create an optimal environment for the tenants that are part of the Community Door so that they want to stay and they see the value add of being part of this. But moving forward, we also want to attract new tenants that are going to be an important part of that service delivery. We've certainly made some significant physical improvements to the space as well. We've looked at diversifying our revenue sources. Unfortunately, we're not able to move forward with this at this time, given the design of our spaces and given the other things that we need to focus on. We did look at some options in terms of diversification of revenue sources, but unfortunately they're not viable at this time. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to continue to look at this moving forward. It just isn't viable at this time.
Shelley, you've gone past the 5 minutes,
Oh.
so, but I would entertain a motion to extend for another minute or two. Moved by Councillor Miles, seconded by Councillor Medeiros. All in favor? Carried. Thank you.
I'm very sorry. I'll speed up. So we do have 2 community hubs, one in Brampton, which is located on Highway 10 in Ray Lawson, and another one in Mississauga at the Sussex Centre. It was really important for us to put the hubs in accessible locations on public transit, et cetera, so that people could access them. It was also important to us to have spaces that are really attractive, where people felt respected and where they were treated with dignity, so that they are very clean, modern, well-maintained facilities. As I mentioned, there are 11 service agencies, and in the appendix, there is a list of them, of which the United Way is one of them, but so is the Center for Education and Training and Volunteer MBC, as a couple of examples, as well as services for individuals who are vulnerable, individuals who have physical and developmental disabilities as well as mental illness. To date, I think that one of the things that we're most proud of is that the community door today is sustainable. We are in the black. We have annually $2.4 million in revenue, and we have a bit of a surplus each year that we can continue to invest in the efficiency and the effectiveness of the community door. In terms of challenges moving forward, no two hubs are exactly the same. There are other hubs in this community, such as the William G. Davis Center, for example. But what we found as we looked at hubs throughout Ontario is that no two hubs are the same, nor should they be, because they really should respond to the demographics and the human service needs in the community. Secondly, while tenants say that they'd like to share and they'd like to have more shared services, actually the implementation of that is more difficult than easier said than done. So this is something that we definitely want to work on in terms of the Community 2.0 model. And then, as I mentioned before, attracting the knowledge and the expertise in the development and implementation of community hubs is challenging because this is a new initiative. As I mentioned, in terms of what we've accomplished so far, we do have a strategic vision of where we want to go as Community Door 2.0, and we've definitely increased collaboration. But as you can see on the list, there's still a number of things that we want and need to do in terms of realizing our objectives as an organization, and that we're going to continue to strive for. So what are we going to do between now and 2020? Well, in this slide, you'll see that we have 4 phases. The first one is to, between now and the end of this year, is determine the right agency mix. Secondly, to initiate the service delivery model. Third is the design and development of that. And then fourth is the opening of the community doors in Brampton and Mississauga by 2021. So that in summary, how can you help? The region has been tremendously supportive to this point, but we believe that in order for us to achieve this vision of having a community hub where people can access the services when they need them and that they're truly integrated and highly efficient and effective, we'd like the region to assist us by providing us with human services and demographic data, to assist us with understanding where community hubs will add the most value to the community and where real estate opportunities exist, and share in our vision and be real champions of the community door and the community hub model. And I apologize for going over again. But thank you. We could not have done it without you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. If you'd stay in place, Councillor Miles.
So you're not asking for more money?
No.
We could bow if you like.
No, I'm speechless. I want to say that I certainly appreciate you coming and giving an update to members of council on this. And I think we've shown that we support the concept of community hubs and the community door. So we applaud you for moving forward on this. And I also think it's pretty amazing that you have come here and you have actually recognized that the job is a lot more difficult than I think you originally contemplated. And it is hard to get people to share, isn't it? Yes. So thank you. Yeah, thank you for your honesty, your integrity, for coming forward here. And I would be happy to move, Mr. Chairman. There is a list of asks that the community door has. I don't think that there should be an issue with the region complying with any of the asks in the recommendation. It's on. You're both looking at me baffled. It's on the last slide.
I'm not baffled. It's just that the protocol is from a deputation. My understanding is that we can only take a motion of referral back to staff for a report, which
Okay.
There
is
and the
a-
reports,
there
and the
is a-
report's here, so I would say that you could move receipt of the report.
Okay, so I'm assuming that everything you've asked for is addressed in the report and that our staff are more than happy to continue to work and support the community door. And Council has taken additional steps to look at developing more community hubs in our community. And as you've said, no two are the same, nor should they be. So again, thank you. And I'll move the recommendations in the report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. And no one else on the list? Okay, no, I thank both of you for being here, and certainly, Mayor Crombie, just put on.
Sorry, thank you. Just wanted to say hello, Shelley. Thank you, it's good to have you back, and hope everything's going well for you, and I think you've got a lot of support around the table, and I'd be delighted to second the Councillor Miles' motion. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. No, thank you, both of you, for being here today, and certainly, we certainly respect and appreciate the leadership roles that you've played, and we look forward to working with you to accomplish your goals.
Thank you very much.
We have a
appreciate that.
motion then of, I think it's item 16.1, moved by Councillor Miles, seconded by Mayor Crombie. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next delegation then is Deb Henry, retail worker, regarding the statutory holidays for retail workers in the holiday shopping bylaw in the Region of Peel. And this relates to item 7.4.
Good morning, and thank you, Council and staff, for allowing me this opportunity to explain the importance of the 9 statutory holidays to the retail workers in Peel Region. My name is Deb Henry. I work in the produce department of a grocery store and have for almost 14 years. I have 2 grown children, 6 grandchildren ranging from 5 to 14. My family is extremely important to me, as I'm sure yours are to you. I do my best to keep up the family traditions I grew up with, but it isn't easy. Some of my best memories are the ones of Sunday dinners when all the family would be home because of the other small businesses. Everything was closed on Sundays. The statutory holidays were even better. Those were the times that aunts, uncles, and cousins could come from out of town, would also be around to celebrate whatever that occasion would be. They are great memories that I have shared with my grandchildren and children, and we must remember it's only 9 days a year. Today, we still could keep up these traditions, but with Sundays now being part of our regular work week with no premium pay, there are many Sunday dinners that my daughter is not sitting at the table with us anymore because she too is a retail worker and must work. The statutory holidays are the only days we are guaranteed off to spend with our families and friends. As retail workers, it is becoming more precarious all the time, changing schedules and the need to hold down more than one job at a time as the full-time jobs disappear and the need to work 2 or 3 part-time jobs to support our families, to pay our bills and put money up and put food on the table. Many of us leave home before the sun comes up and arrive home after their children have gone to bed, making these holidays a necessity in our hectic lives as valuable family time. The big box stores want to open on the statutory holidays, so those people like yourselves, lucky enough to have those days off, have some time, have somewhere to go or something to do on their days off. And again, it is only 9 days a year. The small businesses are in support of keeping this bylaw the way it is. These are the days they thrive. They will be affected horribly if the larger stores around them are allowed to open, taking much needed money out of their pockets. We have now learned that the retail stores don't make more money by opening on Sundays. We have learned that they open because other stores They don't want their customers going to the other stores to lose their business. Customers only have so much money to spend, no matter how many days the stores are open. I have to wonder if we would be having these discussions if the owners and CEOs, who already make multi-million dollars in profits every year, had to work in their stores on these days. Or if politicians were expected to work on the statutory holidays, would you be here giving deputations with me to keep those times with your family, to preserve the statutory holidays? It's only 9 days out of 365 days a year. Is there anything that is needed from a retail store or a statutory holiday that couldn't be purchased on the day before or the day after that is more important than allowing retail workers to have guaranteed time to spend with their families and friends, or just to rest and rejuvenate? I urge you to support retail workers in keeping our holiday shopping bylaws status quo, because it's only 9 days. Thank you for your time and consideration in this very important matter. Our future generations are depending on us. We work to live, not live to work. But it is 9 days that play a significant role in the life of all retail workers. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. If you just stay in place, Councillor
And if I
Sato.
could just share, this is my 6 grandchildren. I know you can't see it, but that's why we do it.
Thank you, Deb. It's good to see you here today, and yeah, we've met before, and you know that I'm fully supportive of what you're asking for, and have been. I just want to sort of comically say to you that we do work on statutory holidays. That's usually when some of the major events are going on in around the municipalities. So, you know, we fully understand leaving the family, or sometimes taking them with us, those that have young children, taking you know, our grandchildren with us on some of those events that we go to. So, but I agree. I think retail workers should have those days off. Yeah. Part of the problem that we are facing at the region, and that I guess necessitated this, is that the province is not taking action. And that has been our concern all along, is that the province sets a rule, they set the statutory holidays, the Retail Act, and then they leave it to us to do the enforcement and the exemptions, which has been problematic. So are you taking, you know, we're coming up to an election time.
Councillor Sato, this...
I'm asking a question.
No, I'm just going to remind you that the report is coming in June 14th.
No, I know it is. No,
Okay.
I realize that, but I'm asking because the election is coming before the report. Are you approaching the candidates in the provincial election and getting your message to them? Because to me, that's really where the main decisions need to be made provincially to keep a level playing field.
Right, I agree. And as you know, we are just retail workers out there, and that has been suggested to us, and we really do need to start doing that. But we have sent letters, actually, to Ms. Wynne, who has not responded to any of them. But absolutely, that is very important, and this would be a pivotal time to do something like that.
Well, I would suggest that you go to every all candidates meeting that you can, that
we
you
do have some
to,
scheduled to attend.
Good,
absolutely.
good. That you speak with all of the provincial candidates and you really get that message across, because ultimately, I think the province needs to be doing something on this as well.
Absolutely.
You know where most of us stand.
They passed the buck. You know,
They
we
did.
shouldn't even be sitting here having this conversation right now.
Yeah, but that's,
So,
anyway, thank you.
absolutely.
All right. Mayor Crombie.
Oh, actually, I was going to ask the same thing Councillor Sato did, so nice to see you again, and
Good
I think
morning.
you have a lot of support on council, so.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Councillor Sprovieri. have a
Thank you,
question?
Chairman, and thank you for the presentation, and we totally understand where you're coming from. I also would urge you to get after the province. This is a similar situation with if you remember the smoking issue that we dealt with, where the province basically allowed municipalities to pit against each other, because one would say, we're going to be open, and the other ones would say, well, you have to let us open too, otherwise we're going to lose the business, you know, and it's all about the business aspect. And this is happening also with the industry also, that some areas allow openings and some don't, and everybody's worried that they're losing business. And so I think that the province has to really say, these are protected, and these are going to be protected across the board, across the province. And I believe that's the only way that you're really going to achieve. Otherwise, we're all going to be bickering between municipalities, and the businesses are coming to us.
That's what's happening now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's exactly what's happening.
Yeah. So
and most people don't even know.
Right.
The people who it's affecting most don't even know what's happening.
And
Councilor
perhaps-
Spillier, there'll be an opportunity on June 14th to debate this, so
Of course.
if you've got a question.
Yeah, I will certainly.
proceed.
Well, it just, the question is, yeah, are you getting off the province, just like Councilor Sato?
Yes.
Because they're the ones. Thank you. Thank you,
agree.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you.
Our next delegation then is Corey Nielsen, a retail worker regarding the holiday shopping bylaw. Welcome, Corey.
Thank you. Good morning, councilors and staff. My name is Corey Nelson. I come to you today to discuss the holiday shopping bylaw review here in Peel Region. For the past 15 years, my wife and I work in retail. I'm a full-time worker, and she holds 2 part-time positions. We have 3 children, and finding childcare is difficult with our irregular shifts. If stores were to open, I can't imagine finding childcare would be easy on a statutory holiday. Sometimes my wife and I go weeks without a day off together. We love doing things as a family, so we make sure we plan for our statutory holidays. Those days we know neither of us will have to work, and we're able to have some time with all 5 of us as a family. It's not just our family. Many families in retail face the same issues working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet, making statutory holidays guaranteed family time. I know you've probably been told that working on a statutory holiday would be voluntary, but it's not always that way. If people are forced or not given the option to opt out of working the stat, they could file a complaint with the Ministry of Labor. However, I hope they have patience during the wait to have their complaint heard. In 2016 and 2017, there were 15,498 complaints filed for the Ministry of Labor to investigate. Of those complaints, public holiday pay were in the top 5 claims filed. If Peel Region passes this bylaw, I can't imagine how many more complaints would be filed, and wonder how much of a wait it would be before an answer was received. Some people see retail workers as not valuable. We are highly replaceable, and some look at our positions as temporary and not important. But we raise families with these jobs. Older people supplement their retirement with these jobs. Our youth put themselves through college and university with these jobs. We are important, and we deserve to have the same rest time as most of the workers in the province. I'm very thankful to be a part of a union that helps bring these issues forward. I know only a small percentage of retail workers are unionized. However, the non-unionized workers really depend on the unions to bring the awareness to the communities and on the issues retail workers face on a daily basis. Thank you so much for listening to these issues we as retail workers struggle with every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. And if you just stay, I have Councilor Medeiros.
Thank you, Chair. Just quickly, one question. You talked about childcare. Has the employer ever offered on, when you work on the weekends or if you have difficulties with childcare, have they ever offered some form of support, either financial or sometimes on premise, or have they ever tried to accommodate the lack of daycare that you might have?
No, they don't do anything in any effort financially or support. There's been issues where my wife's had to call in because we couldn't find childcare, and the workplace will not accommodate that. They say it's not their problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Miles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just want to acknowledge Corey, Debbie, and Tammy who spoke to us last week. I know public speaking is not an easy thing for anyone to do. For most people, they would probably rate it as their biggest fear. So I'd just like to acknowledge not just the courage. These 3 people have met with all of us. They have presented themselves in such a polite, professional, I still don't have that word, But you guys are amazing, and I personally just want to acknowledge that you have handled this in such a professional way, and you should be just really proud of yourself. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Very nervous being up there.
I can imagine it's not easy.
Yes.
I would have given you a 10, Corey.
Yeah. You all deserve to be
Good
recognized.
stuff. Thanks very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here today. Moving right along. Call on Justin Terry, Regional Economic Analyst, Transport Canada, regarding the Region Appeal Staff Report titled Establishing the Smart Freight Center. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, council members, regional staff, good morning. My name is Justin Terry, and I'm a senior policy analyst from Transport Canada, Ontario region. Before I continue, Mr. Chair, my presentation is approximately 10 minutes long. I'll try to speed it up as best as I can, if that's okay with you.
Yeah. Okay, so, all right, it's been moved by Councillor Sporbier, seconded by Councillor Cook, then all in favor to extend to 10 minutes? Carried, thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to begin by first thanking Sabir Saeed for inviting us to speak with you today about, first, the Smart Freight Center, and also about Transport Canada's supply chain visibility projects. Now, since Transport Canada supply chain visibility projects provides the context or the lens through which we will be looking at the Smart Freight Center, I would like to start with the visibility projects. Transport Canada's supply chain visibility projects is an important initiative for both headquarters and regional staff, as it provides us with the mandate to work collaboratively with private and public sector, and really it gives us an opportunity to work with these groups to look at addressing various transportation initiatives such as e-commerce. As part of the 2017 federal budget, our Multimodal Transportation Performance and Capacity Analysis Office in Ottawa launched the Supply Chain Visibility Project on behalf of Transport Canada. Through these projects, we will be strengthening our working relationship between Transport Canada and key transportation stakeholders across the country. Now, the rationale for our visibility projects is really based on three themes. The first is to build stronger and more efficient transportation corridors to our trade markets, thus helping Canadian businesses and communities compete in the global marketplace. Second, to improve evidence-based analysis in order to inform investments in important trade-enabling infrastructure, and also in addressing policy decisions that needs to be made. Third, to facilitate and coordinate the effective prioritizing and leveraging of stakeholder investments to achieve system-wide improvements into our transportation network. Now, from Transport Canada's perspective, the work that Peel Region staff has done as it relates to goods movement over the past 10+ years have certainly aligned with our interests as we go forward. In fact, Transport Canada has a very long history working with the region, going back to 2004 when we first partnered in putting on what I think was the actual first Goods Movement Task Force conference here in Peel Region. However, more recently, we have continued our working relationship with the region, as I have been appointed as a member of the Goods Movement Task Force, which worked on the 2012-2016 strategic plan and also continued on in the long-range transportation plan. I guess looking at this, you can say that we certainly established a long-term relationship with the region starting from the very beginning. What I'd like to do at this point is just to identify the three areas of the country where our visibility projects are taking off. First, when you look at BC area, our focus there is really to establish a multimodal program to provide greater visibility into end-to-end supply chain performance of all commodities that traverse the West Coast. On the East Coast, in the province of Nova Scotia, our focus for our visibility projects is really to assist in the movement of agriculture products on trucks through the city of Halifax. And last, in central Canada, in Quebec, the focus that we bring is to really look at how we can improve the movement of goods on the St. Lawrence Seaway corridor, and more specifically in looking at the goods that move from the Port of Montreal to the GTAA. And I'm sure many of you are quite aware that a lot of the goods ends up here in Peel Region. While those projects certainly help us improve our goods movement and our overall transportation network, certainly the one that's most important to many here in the room is the focus that we're putting on the Greater Toronto Area. Here, it is our intent to better understand the importance of e-commerce. E-commerce, as you know, is a growing business that certainly is impacting the way we do our regular day-to-day deliveries and conduct our daily business. From Transport Canada perspective, we're very interested in establishing or understanding how the existing supply channels are used to move these goods, and more importantly, to really understand what key stakeholders are saying about those channels that have not yet really been developed or are just now coming to the forefront. Transport Canada has invested dollars and in-kind contributions in looking at this e-commerce problem. We actually have hired McMaster University, which is one of the academic institutions that will be partnering with the region here in addressing and putting together the Smart Freight Center. We have started working with them to ask the questions around e-commerce. And where we are right now in that process is we've got an ongoing relationship with Peel Region and also Ministry of Transportation in looking at asking the questions around e-commerce and also in conducting a pilot. The pilot study we're anticipating would be taking off as we've got a discussion forum planned for June the 27th. I think that's a tentative date. But we're hoping that at that point, again, stakeholders would come to us, give us an understanding of how e-commerce is impacting their day-to-day duties as it relates to goods movement. Now, all of these projects are certainly of great importance to us as it will help us all better understand what is happening as it relates to goods movement. We are prepared as Transport Canada to share our findings, to share the information that we are gaining through these studies that we've done, and we're also prepared to share it with the key stakeholders. Now, because of the rationale and the key considerations that our visibility projects are based on, the three themes that I spoke about, we see transport e-commerce visibility study as serving as a platform for the department to engage the Smart Freight Center once it is established. Transport Canada plans to work with the region and its partners being McMaster University, University of Toronto, and York University, to address some of the transportation issues and to identify the linkages that exist between the proposed objective of the Smart Freight Center and the transportation initiatives that we have as a department. We recognize that the center could be a great asset to promote collaboration among stakeholders and to address important transportation questions, and we are prepared to enter into discussions with the center once it is established to identify projects that are of mutual interest. For projects that are tied to the federal government's interests, we will assess how best we can collaborate with the Smart Freight Center, whether through financial or in-kind contributions to those specific projects. In closing, I would like to say that we look forward to establishing the Smart Freight Center and to have it engaging academic institutions, the public and private sector, to address the emerging transportation trends, challenges, and opportunities that will be impacting our global trade and our local economy. Thank you.
Thank you. If you just stay, we have Mayor Thompson.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, I think it'd be appropriate to bring the report, and I'll gladly move the delegation here this morning from Mr. Terry, and thank you for being here. My question is I know there's an ask of us contributing, $240,000, but out of that, how are we able to bundle? Is there other sources of funding that we're trying to do here, especially for the e-commerce, another way to off-peak hours to unload, especially in the downtown cores, which create a lot of parking issues? I think working with the 3 universities, what other, this isn't just dollars, but you were talking about in kind, but what other opportunities can we get from federal and provincial funding on this?
Through the chair, I can only speak about the federal government, of course,
Okay.
not so much the provincial, but we think, as we've started this discussion, Your Worship, as you're quite well aware, there's a lot of support, a lot of synergies that exist. From Transport Canada, we anticipate that there will be projects developed through the work that we're doing now, through engaging with stakeholders and hearing about their concerns. But I think there are opportunities as well, just because we've got a focus that's across the country in using the Smart Freight Center, not just for research, but also as a learning institution. We've currently been engaged by the government of India to provide training in goods movement. And from our perspective, there's no other place like Peel Region. The resources, the skills, the experience, it's all here. So for us, we think that there are other things that we can do. We can share data. We can certainly, for projects that are close to us, provide that financial funding. But we can also leverage other relationships with others who can certainly provide input financially to the Smart Freight Center.
And I do know there's been experiments where we've done off-peak hour delivery, especially when we've had the Pan Am Games, the Olympic Games in BC and different things. There's some good data to work with that the universities will probably be using as well.
Yes, and a lot of that rests with MTO, and I know we're certainly engaging with MTO and that's why we're partnering with them and with the region to sort of move the whole question of e-commerce forward. So, yes.
Well, I thank you for your delegation, and I think this is definitely a good move, because what we're trying to do is what are the low-hanging fruit we can reduce on gridlock and be able to move commerce quicker. And I think this is a good way, because I do know that we had a presentation here before how we can try to get trucks to share the roads better, especially on Derry Road and Highway 50 and different things like this. But I think coming from a different lens, this is just another way of being able to help improve connectivity both for car traffic, truck traffic, and moving people. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Terry, for your delegation. Just a couple of questions with respect to this Smart Freight study or pilot. I don't quite understand it. I know that there are a lot of moving parts to this. It's been in the works for a long time. And I guess what I need to understand is the impact it will have on my community. I know that the mayor spoke about the off-peak hours of deliveries and things like that, and I understand the need to move goods and services. But right now, my community deals with a lot of heavy truck traffic going through there, and so I need to understand this Smart Freight Village, the impacts, and where are you looking at locating this? Is it a physical location? What exactly is it?
The Smart Freight Center is actually, if you can say, a body of resources that would be made available to study any transportation issue or question that you have, or to explore any opportunities. The location of it is, it would vary. It's going to be housed, I guess, partly in all of the partners that are involved, so at the University of Toronto, York University, and also McMaster. There's going to be a rotation of leaders within the Smart Freight Center. So it's really more about being a learned institution where you can get information from and have them do research of how best you can improve your transportation network. And I think, well, a lot of this, of course, is led by Peel, but in terms of what they can do, what we are excited about as Transport Canada is that they will provide a wide range of resources. So if we have a question, we can take it to them.
Okay, and I will probably have some more discussions with our staff to get a better understanding, so thank you for that. Now, your industry, and you're talking about moving goods and services, one of the things that you need, and I think it's it should be a focus, and I don't know if you've done any of this work, but the province is extending Highway 427 only to Major Mac, and I'm going to tell you, with all the additional industrial lands coming on, both on the Vaughan side, the Brampton side, and our side, I don't think that that's enough. And if you're talking about moving goods and services, you need that infrastructure. And in my opinion, in my humble opinion, I think that what you need is your industry needs to make it very clear to the province that in order to do that, 6.6 kilometers is not enough. That needs to go at least to Highway 9, because what's happening right now, all of that traffic is coming through our villages. So have you done any of that, and have you made any requests like that to the province?
Through the chair, no, I haven't. It's sort of out of our preview as Transport Canada. We've been very pleased to be engaged in conversation with the region about the last mile and some of the infrastructure improvements that are required. We've noted that, but it's not really within our preview to launch or initiate some of these requests or identifying of shortcomings of the system within your region.
So we have requested it. Town of Caledon has requested it. Region of Peel has requested it. So I'm requesting your support behind the town and the region as Transport Canada, who deals with goods movement, to support that request, that it goes to Highway 9, because it's having negative impacts in my community. So I'll leave that with you, and you can take it back to your members, and certainly hope that you will support that request. Thank you.
Jeanette, did you have a comment to make before I go to the...
Through the chair. If I can provide some clarity, so the Smart Freight Center is really about bringing groups together to do data analysis and modeling and research and conduct projects. The Smart Freight Village is another concept that's being explored. It's quite different, and it's more about, from a land use planning perspective, do we locate similar goods movement industry in one area? I think in terms of the advocacy to get things changed, like you suggested, the Smart Freight Center can help doing modeling and data analysis that can then give stronger arguments for advocacy to get some physical changes made, whether it's highway extensions and things like that.
Perfect. Thank you for the clarification, Jeanette. Then it's the Smart Freight Village that I have a concern with, because that is the land use planning piece of it. That's what I'm concerned about, because that's what will have an impact on my community. So we'll have further conversations on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sprovieri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Justin, for the presentation. Just a question. Has this been developed elsewhere, this idea of the Smart Freight Center? Has it been done in other countries, the U.S., Europe?
Yes, it has. In fact, I know that there's a similar group in the province of Quebec. And as was explained, it's the Smart Freight Center is really about a number of people coming together and committing to have resources made available to address the improvement of their transportation network. And it's certainly something that is practiced throughout Europe and also in North America as well.
Okay. So then just finally, does the village follow the next step? Does
through the chair, it would be hard for me to say. I think that's going to be up to those who are taking on a leadership role within the Smart Freight Center as to what projects they wish to focus on. As I said earlier, certainly if there are projects put forward that are of interest to us, focusing on the trade corridor and improvement of our trade corridors, which Peel is definitely a key component of. We will certainly, be required to look at that and to see how we can assist.
Sure, and of course, it's voluntary. It's not that it can be imposed in any particular area if a village does come about of some sort.
Well, with the village, through the chair, I'm sure if someone wants to engage the Smart Freight Center to study where best the village should be located, that might be a project that they might take on.
Okay. Thank you, Justin. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Ennis.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, and most importantly, thank you to the federal government for pulling this all together, because I think that we all know around this table that we're one of the largest transportation hubs in North America, and we know the millions of dollars that we're losing annually due to gridlock. So finding best practices and better ways to move our goods and services as well as our people, and helping to promote our healthy and green communities is very important to us. So I appreciate you coming today and presenting and taking this initiative. One of the questions that I did have is in regards to the province's participation in this. So are there any partners from the province that will be participating? Have they offered any funding to match this initiative as well?
Through the chair, I'm aware of a few provincial agencies that have committed to work with the Smart Freight Center. I believe that they are looking at in-kind contributions, but there are probably others within the room here who might be best suited to provide you with the specifics.
Jeanette, did you want to?
Through the chair. So MTO is a partner at the table and very interested, but at this point in time, they have not committed any funding. We hope to leverage the funding we're putting in to get the other stakeholders to come to the table with money.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Councillor Sato.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And I want to thank staff for taking this initiative. It's an excellent report with all of the information, and thank you for being one of our partners with Transport Canada. Could you just clarify, when you were speaking, because I was on the board and then I went off because I thought you'd answered my question. I was going to be asking how, if Transport Canada had approved any funding towards, I know we've asked you, as we've asked the province and everyone else, but I think you mentioned during your presentation, and I wrote down wait and see, that if there are initiatives that the group comes forward with that have an impact nationally, that Transport Canada might be open to providing funding for those specific initiatives, not overall, though.
That's correct. And, from our perspective, I would even go as far as saying it doesn't necessarily have to have a national implication, although that would be best. If it has a positive impact on the trade corridor that's served by this community, that would also be an interest to us. So, for example, facilitating the movement of goods between here and the U.S. border and down through the States and Mexico, et cetera, that is also something that we are interested in as a federal level.
Okay.
So for those types of projects, we are prepared to have a discussion with the Smart Freight Center on how best we can share data and work in other ways to
and help
advance.
to fund. One of the initiatives that we're looking at in Mississauga that really impacts the movement of goods in the region of Peel is the missing link. And I'm looking up there, but Rob has left his seat, and so have the mayor. We've been working on the missing link to get the CP rail to move the rail corridor for freight off the Milton line, and to have a separate freight line that would run across Peel and the north of Toronto to get that freight off the line so that Metrolinx can use it for all-day two-way GO service to serve the businesses in the northwest part of Mississauga and those businesses that are in southwest Brampton as well that are now emerging. We've been working on this for about 20, I've been working on it for 27 years now. I hope that before I retire, hopefully in 4 years, we'll have some commitment. But we have been working with the other municipalities. The Toronto has now come on board, Milton, even Cambridge, because we need that rail link for commuter. So that would necessitate the freight coming off that line because it's the busiest CP line. Is that and it is goods movement, is that something that Transport Canada might be able to, although they have been involved, might be able through this project to dedicate some additional focused resources, because it very directly impacts the region of Peel and more directly the city of Mississauga. And Mayor Crombie just came back in. I'm talking about the missing link and trying to tie it in with this project here.
Through the chair, I personally, as an analyst and a planner.
Yeah, I'm putting you on the spot.
I would think that the question of the missing link might be something that council might choose to task the Smart Freight Center once it is established in looking into. I'm
sorry, I know I'm putting you on the spot here.
Ignoring my sort of rule of addressing sort of what hypothetically might happen.
Yeah.
You know, that is certainly of an interest to Transport Canada.
Right.
So, if it is, then an invitation is extended to us to participate in that discussion. We will be there. Probably wouldn't be me personally,
right,
but we will be there.
Okay, and hopefully you would be there with some financial support as well. Bring a check or something with you. So through you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to kind of throw that out to Jeanette, that I know the city of Mississauga, we would like to see that as part of the Smart Freight Center, because it is a huge impact. And as it also impacts, I guess, Councillor Palesha, your ward as well, in Brampton, for getting the employees to work using the existing, what is now an existing freight line that we would like to see moved out of there. So thank you very much.
Councillor Sato, are you going to put that in a motion of direction to staff then?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And
can we add it in maybe as an additional
Mayor,
on the recommendation? Okay, we have a seconder. So.
Who seconded? Sorry. Councillor Palesha? All right. Okay. Okay. All right. So we'll bring forward then 12.4, and I understand that Mayor Thompson, you'll prepare to move that. And Councillor Ennis, would you second? Oh, she's not there. Somebody, Councillor Downey, second it. We'll take it as read with the addition to, of the direction that Councillor Sato referred to. And this is a recorded vote, please. That carries. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here today.
Oh, you're welcome, Mr.
Oh, and Councillor Starr, would you move the two correspondences related to this item, and Councillor Cook second that? All in favor then of the correspondence? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Mr. Don Given, planner, Malone Given Parsons Limited, on behalf of Mayfield West Phase 2, Stage 2 landowners, regarding the growth management reports on the Regional Council agenda related to items 8.1 to 9.7 inclusive. Welcome again, Don.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of council and staff. You were very generous 2 weeks ago and allowed me to go over time. I don't intend on asking for that relief again today. I'll be quite brief. The staff reports that you have before you were fresh the last time I appeared. I think all of us have had a chance to now understand what they are asking for and the basis for the request. The key one is greater flexibility in how you proceed to implement the growth plan. And that comes from an analysis of some of the implications of trying to bundle everything together and deal with it all at one time through one amendment. On behalf of my clients, I support that. I think it is the right request to be making to the province. The province have issued guidance documents that place an interpretation on the growth plan that puts them out as guidance documents that you have to do it that way. Your staff have quite correctly said that's not the way the growth plan reads. In fact, the growth plan would lead you to believe there is flexibility. And I think that the same situation exists in other regions as well, where when we talk to staff, and I do work across the entire Golden Horseshoe, that there is the same confusion about the growth plan in other regions that exists here. And I think all of those regions are banding together and saying the same message back to the province, that greater flexibility is required. Otherwise, there are consequences that could occur that are not intended. I would only like to confirm that seems to have been realized by the province in their comments back on 9th line, where I understand through the attachments that were issued last night that there's a letter from the province that basically acknowledges that there are circumstances there that requires it to be dealt with differently than they might have contemplated originally. I think that's good news for everybody. I think that that's the kind of realization that the province has to bring to bear on some circumstances that are different. One size doesn't fit all. That was Chairman Gary Carr's comment on the growth plan when it was first issued. It continues to resonate as a message that bears repeating. This province have tried very hard and with a lot of support from all the regions and from the development community to come up with predictable outcomes. But there are some things you can't just predict. It's just too complicated and too ambitious a program. So some flexibility is needed. Mr. Chairman, I would ask you to support and your council to support the staff recommendation. It's an excellent report, well thought out, intelligently written, and it should be issued as quickly as possible to the province. They have extended the deadline for comments to post the election. I think that there's a message in that to you as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I don't intend to use my presentation. It's been kind of superseded by the release of that letter on the 9th line. Thank you.
Okay, if you'd stay in place, Councillor Downey.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, I just was going to move receipt of the delegation.
Okay. No other speakers then. Seconder to that, Councillor Yanika. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Don. Okay, that's a good segue right into growth management. I'm going to ask that our CAO make some introductory remarks, David, if you would, before I call on Arvin to do his presentation.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and maybe Arvin and you can get set up as I just make some brief introductory remarks. I just want to remind Council of the context of this discussion because it has many moving parts in it. Some of them have just been mentioned by the last delegation. I just want to go back to ROPA 24, which was approved by Council in 2012. And through ROPA 24, Regional Council allocated the 2031 population and employment numbers to Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon through a staged process that eventually amended the regional official plan and the policies in that plan. Mississauga and Brampton have been implementing through their local planning processes that allocation of population and employment. And Caledon too has been implementing it. Caledon is slightly different because it requires regional official plan amendments every time it expands its urban boundaries. But put it simply, Caledon divided its population and employment allocation from the region between Mayfield West and Bolton. Mayfield West 2 was implemented and the decision on Bolton's expansion, as you were aware, is before the OMB and will eventually be approved in some fashion, completing the 2031 allocation process that was covered in ROPA 24. Last year, the province allocated new population and growth to 2041. Staff have been working for a number of years with local municipalities and with BUILD on a new integrated process to update the regional official plan, including the allocation of the new 2017 or 2041 population employment numbers to Mississauga, Brampton, and Caledon. And last October, Council will recall, you approved sending that draft ROPA to the province for comment. And that draft ROPA included a stage approach to planning, as we have done in the past, draft allocation of the 2041 numbers, the completion of the expansion of Mayfield West 2, Stage 2, a conversion of employment lands in Mississauga and Brampton. It also supported, through policies, Brampton's aspirational 40% activity rate. And the work plan that we presented to Council for the work of that ROPA would have had the draft ROPA presented to Council along with a DC bylaw update, a related DC bylaw update, by this June, before the end of this term of Council. The further staging of the policies in that ROPA related to transportation, transit, agricultural mapping, and other things that you will see detailed in Arvin's report would follow in stages, as we have done in the past. That work has been frustrated by two recent events. One is the cancellation of the GTA West work, EA, and that's going to have some implications on the assumptions that we've made about employment lands and about transportation. But more of greater concern to us is the introduction of proposed planning process changes, and the last delegation just spoke to that. As an aside, at the same time that we've been working on the 2041 allocation, staff have also been working with Mississauga on a parallel process to complete the 2031 local planning in Mississauga by being able to develop the ninth line lands. You're going to hear a lot of detail in the presentation about all of this from Arvin and Adrian and Steve. The bottom line is that staff are recommending Council advise the province that while its proposed process changes are well-intentioned, they are flawed. And this is a position that is held not only by staff here, but by our colleagues across the GTA. To put it simply, it's a bit too heavenly minded to be of any earthly good. And therefore, the recommendation that staff has made through the report to Council is that we pressure the province to continue with a staged approach. It is too complex to try and do it all in one fell swoop. We're also recommending that we continue to move forward with the work in anticipation that the province will amend its proposed process changes. So I think it's important for Council not to lose sight of this larger context as we get into the details and as Council has its discussion on how to move forward. Arvin? Oh, Mr. Chairman?
Actually, I have a couple on the list here. Yeah, I was going to suggest that we do hold it until after the presentation, anyone that's on the list here, and let Arvin proceed with his presentation.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of Council. It's my pleasure to be here to make this presentation. I'm here with Steve Jacks. Steve is our Director of Growth Management Strategy at the Region of Peel. We are here today to provide an overview of the emerging provincial policy impacting land use planning in the Region of Peel. And we're going to share with you some of the implications on some of the major planning and growth management initiatives currently underway at the region. So I'm going to begin with an overview of the current land use planning context guiding our work here in Peel. So the current planning context is in large part driven by the 2006 Places to Grow growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe That first growth plan provided extensive policies for managing growth and development, including policy direction to achieve higher levels of intensification and greater densities than we had previously seen in the Greater Golden Horseshoe. In it were forecasts for population and employment growth for the year 2031. And all single and upper tier municipalities were required to plan for these forecasts. In response, the region undertook a series of regional official plan amendments to bring our official plan into conformity with the growth plan. And the operative piece there is we undertook a series of official plan amendments, not one OP. And we incorporated these amendments into the official plan. One you'll remember is called ROPA 24. ROPA 24 was adopted by Council in 2010. But the province failed to make a decision on ROPA 24 within the prescribed timeframes. So the ROPA was appealed to the Ontario Municipal Board. Following settlement with all of the parties, ROPA 24 came into effect in 2012, except for portions of that ROPA that were connected to the GTA West corridor that remained appealed. I'm sorry, I'll go back a little. ROPA 28 is the next one I want to talk about. It's the employment lands in Bolton. And ROPA 29, Mayfield West Phase 2 Stage 1, and ROPA 30, which we all call BREZ. These were local-led settlement boundary expansions in Caledon that implemented the 2031A growth forecast. As you are aware, ROPA 30 remains under appeal at the Ontario Municipal Board. In 2013, the province released Amendment 2 to the growth plan that included revised forecast to 2031, which became known now as the 2031B forecast. And for the first time, it provided forecasts out to the 2041 planning horizon. And then, as you are all aware, in 2017, the province concluded a review of several planning policy documents, including the growth plan, and the new growth plan came into force on July the 1st, 2017. So staff have been now adjusting our work plans in response to the new growth plan because what's contained within the growth plan is quite substantial, which I'm going to outline in more detail in my presentation. Adjustments to our growth plan continues as the province continues to bring forth new guidance documents and so forth over the last several months. So I wanted to give you a bit of an understanding between the 2006 old growth plan and the new 2017 growth plan. One of the major changes brought about by the 2017 growth plan was new requirements for undertaking a municipal comprehensive review. So you're going to hear that quite a bit. We'll call it MCR, sometimes the same thing. Under the previous 2006 growth plan, an MCR process was often led by the local municipalities and was limited to only two things: settlement boundary expansions and employment conversions. And these did not require provincial approval. Okay? So what's changed? The 2017 growth plan. Upper and single-tier municipalities now have the sole and only authority to initiate a municipal comprehensive review. And now the approval authority is the province of Ontario. Municipal comprehensive reviews now must cover much more matters than previously. For example, when you do a municipal comprehensive review, you have to undertake a review of the entire growth forecast for the region. You have to look at density and intensification targets for the region. You have to make sure that the municipal comprehensive review incorporates any settlement boundary expansions. A settlement boundary expansion cannot be done separately after the fact. A housing strategy must be a part of any municipal comprehensive review that is now done. New employment policies or review of employment policies must be undertaken. An employment strategy must be undertaken. All major transit station areas must be reviewed and delineated as part of a municipal comprehensive review. Strategic growth areas must be considered. Provincial mapping for agriculture and natural heritage systems must also be considered. So as you can imagine, the world has changed quite a bit from the old growth plan and the new and the requirements of the 2017 growth plan. In order to support implementation of this new growth plan, the province released a series of guidance documents. Some are released as final versions, such as natural heritage and agriculture systems mapping, but most are in draft form and still out there for comment and so forth. For example, the land needs assessment methodology was released in draft on December the 9th of 2017. The methodology, once approved, will be a mandatory process to be used by municipalities when determining the land needed to accommodate future growth. As was reported to Council in February of this year, comments were provided to the province. However, we don't expect significant changes to our land budget methodology, which we have been using for quite some time, because we've looked at the provincial methodology and it's quite consistent. Most recently, the draft application of targets guidance document and municipal comprehensive review guidance documents were both released on March the 21st of 2018. Comments are due back by May the 7th, which has now been extended to June 19th. The draft targets guidance document generally validates the comprehensive integrated approach to allocating growth, the journey that Peel Region has been on for quite some time. However, we would need to provide more detailed documentation as part of our land budget work. Our major concerns lie with the draft Municipal Comprehensive Review, or MCR, guidance. As discussed, the MCR requirements in the 2017 growth plan are significantly expanded with a greater regional role and a much broader scope of matters that are now being covered. The draft guidance document outlines the process for undertaking an MCR. Most notably, that all policies in the growth plan that require an MCR must be fulfilled through one single official plan amendment. So we can no longer do, a conformity exercise and then a local-led, locally driven exercise for settlement boundary expansions we had done previously. While there is value in this integrated approach that is being targeted by the province, it actually supports the region's integrated growth management work that we have been doing. But our concern is that one single amendment would impede our ability to be flexible, will impede our ability to implement important community building initiatives, would impede our ability to undertake our growth management policies the way we have envisioned it. The single amendment approach would result in some unintended consequences. For example, lands that have been demonstrated as appropriate for employment land conversions would be held up for several years. Similarly, community building initiatives could also be held up, such as redevelopment of underutilized portions of old employment lands. The overall delay in planning for new growth may accelerate land speculation for existing designated lands. It may also delay housing starts, impact housing affordability, delay implementation of employment strategies, which are all intended to respond to the rapidly changing economic and employment landscape that we have in the Greater Golden Horseshoe. Staff are currently preparing detailed comments on this MCR guidance with the specific recommendation that the province allow flexibility for a staged implementation of official plan amendments undertaken in a manner that would continue to allow for an integrated approach to planning for complete communities, such as the approach that has currently and historically been successful in Peel. This recommendation is included in the staff report on today's agenda. Also, informing the current planning process are the changes brought about by Bill 139. It's called the Building Better Communities and Conserving Watersheds Act, and it came into effect on April the 3rd, 2018. With this act coming into force, the OMB is replaced by the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, which have some distinct differences and implications for the appeal process. Relevant to the current official plan review, conformity amendments under Section 26 of the Planning Act can no longer be appealed unless there is a non-decision by the province. And the province now has up to 300 days to issue a decision. When considering if an appeal can move forward, appeals are no longer considered based on good planning principles, but instead are assessed based on consistency and conformity with provincial and relevant upper-tier plans. So when you're looking at to see whether an appeal can actually move forward to the next stage and the body can deal with it, they look to see whether there's conformity and consistency with the regional official plan. Every appeal will be subject to mandatory case management in an effort to find a resolution outside of the hearing process. Evidence presented at the appeal hearing to the LPAT is limited to that which informed council's original decision. So you can't bring new evidence at the appeal, which means that it will be essential that staff provide a comprehensive set of supporting analysis and documents as part of the staff reporting process on regional policy decisions. If the tribunal finds that the decision does not meet the new standards of review, it refers it back to council for reconsideration. The municipality then has 90 days to issue a new decision. If council does not issue a new decision or does not change their decision, it may be brought for a second hearing, back to LPAT for a second hearing. Upon a second hearing, the tribunal can make any decision that this council could have made in the first place. We will be reporting further with any specific changes recommended to our current policies and procedures as this whole area of the official OMB changes take shape. Now, Steve and I will provide a summary of how this changing provincial land use policy context impacts major planning initiatives currently underway in the region. In particular, I'm going to be talking about the PL 2041 Regional Official Plan Review, and then Steve is going to talk about the Growth Management Strategy Work Program. The Planning Act requires the region to update its official plan every 5 years, unless if a new official plan has been approved by council. In that case, the review can be 10 years later. Official plan reviews ensure that the official plan conforms to provincial plans and policies. The PL 2041 Regional Official Plan Review is currently underway to fulfill this requirement. The PL 2041 schedule was originally envisioned as a staged process with multiple official plan amendments implementing the various policy focus areas as the work is completed. The first of these is called ROPA 27, which this council has approved, and it's come into effect in 2017. And that ROPA included policies related to age-friendly planning and health in the built environment. The growth management and transportation ROPAs that were brought forward for public consultation in February of this year, intending to implement the integrated approach to growth management, were originally intended for adoption this year, but now have been delayed until early next year to respond to the GTA West Corridor EA cancellation. Significant work has also been undertaken on the housing ROPA and 2 environment-themed bundles, with draft policies developed and circulated to the local municipalities for review and input, and both are expected to be brought before council in late 2019. Given the extensive scope of work required, major transit station area delineation and settlement area boundary expansions were originally scheduled to be brought forward for adoption in late 2020 or 2021. But that's changed. Based on the new or draft municipal comprehensive review guidelines released in March, we now understand that the timeline for completing the official plan review may have to be revised. If the final guidance reflects the draft guidance and require implementation through a single amendment, it would mean that all of the remaining focus areas, with the possible exception of aggregate resource policies, would be required to be implemented together in one amendment. So you can see that's a lot of work for one official plan amendment. This comprehensive ROPA, as a result, would not be able to proceed to adoption until late 2020 or actually 2021 at the earliest, with the limitation on timelines being the extensive work required to address elements such as the delineation of the major transit station areas throughout the entire region of Peel, full settlement expansions to consider that all in this ROPA to the year 2041, undertake full subwatershed planning on a regional basis, undertake full stormwater master planning, implement the provincial natural heritage system, and also agriculture mapping, and that's the reason why it would take so long. As I noted earlier, our planning and growth management work also has been impacted by the recent decision on the GTA West Corridor. Regional staff are assessing the impacts of the GTA West Corridor highway cancellation on planning initiatives in Peel, including implications on employment growth allocations and employment strategies in the region, implications on transportation infrastructure plan in collaboration with both York and Halton region, revisiting water and wastewater infrastructure needs and timing, and evaluating the financial implications of changes to growth allocations and potential new municipal infrastructure needed to replace the provincial highway. It will be important to move really quickly in assessing impacts of the GTA West Corridor announcement in order to allow planning for Northwest Brampton to move forward. We know that development in Northwest Brampton will be a major element of accommodating the population and employment growth to 2031 and 2041 that has been allocated to Peel by the province. You've heard me talk about major transit station areas, so I'll expand a little bit on that. The general locations of the major transit station areas and the associated policy framework was provided in the draft Growth Management and Transportation ROPA that was previously brought forward to Council in February. However, full delineation of each major transit area, including applicable densities, is required under the 2017 Growth Plan. This work is proposed to be undertaken through a separate amendment as a staged approach that I have described earlier. However, should the province finalize the draft MCR guidance as presently written, a staged approach would no longer be possible. Work has already begun with the area municipalities to address the detailed requirements. With the first phase, we know the first phase will be completed by the end of this year or early next year. And however, the full extent of the work, including the delineation of the major transit station areas in each and every circumstance, will not be complete until well into 2019 or early into 2020 at the earliest. I talked a bit about settlement boundary expansions. These are now required as part of a municipal comprehensive review. Previously, such boundary expansions could be done through later planning processes and be initiated by the local municipality. Now they must be initiated by the region. Settlement boundary expansions would take into consideration the land needs assessment to 2041, and the region will be undertaking significant technical work in collaboration with the town of Caledon, as well as consultation with stakeholders and the public as part of this MCR. Mayfield West Phase 2, Stage 2. The Mayfield West Phase 2, Stage 2 settlement boundary expansion was proposed in the draft Growth Management ROPA as an initial settlement expansion, since much of the technical work to support the expansion had been completed as part of the ROPA 29 work. And honestly, the fact that it represents a logical boundary expansion of Mayfield West and is in support of completing that community, the draft MCR requirements would impact the timing of proceeding with Mayfield West Phase 2, Stage 2, since all expansions now must accommodate the 2041 growth, and it must occur as part of one single comprehensive ROPA implementing the Municipal Comprehensive Review. Peel staff continue to advance the position that the province should revise the draft MCR guidance to recognize that a staged approach consideration of settlement boundary expansion could be an appropriate process given clear circumstances such as Mayfield West Phase 2, Stage 2, and the substantial body of work, technical work, that has been completed for this development. So, ROPA 24, its implementation to 2031, I just wanted to quickly review that. The information on this slide gives a window into the history of settlement expansion in Caledon, implementing ROPA 24, including the growth plan math that led to the current Mayfield West Phase 2 boundary. So ROPA 24 allocated 21,500 people and 11,000 jobs to be accommodated on 609 hectares of settlement expansion lands, essentially newly designated greenfields. This was tied to a specific density target of 53 people and jobs per hectare, which is to be combined with the density of the greenfield lands that had already existed in 2006 to make an overall greenfield density of 42 people and jobs per hectare in Caledon. And you see that 42 number in ROPA 24. Now that number is slightly lower than the provincial requirement, but because of the higher densities on greenfield lands that were being achieved in Mississauga and Brampton. You can see any changes to the area or population and employment numbers in Mayfield West, however, would have implications elsewhere in Caledon, given the math. Peel staff have recommended the Mayfield West Phase 2 Stage 2 expansion proceed as part of a staged approach incorporated in an initial growth management ROPA to implement allocation to 2041. This approach is consistent with our request to the province to allow flexibility for a staged implementation of amendments. Mayfield West Phase 2 Stage 2 settlement expansion could not proceed independently, so it cannot proceed independently from a staged growth management ROPA, since the 2017 growth plan policies tie settlement expansion to completion of the 2041 land needs assessment based on the provincial methodology, and an independent amendment would not include that overall 2041 allocation. So it's important, the two have to work together. Let's quickly review the 9th line lands. So the process has also been discussed in relation to settlement expansions. The 9th line's lands were annexed to the region in 2010, following which regional staff were directed to work with Mississauga staff to bring the lands into the Peel official plan boundary and establish a planning framework. That process has unfolded with extensive technical work undertaken to support an MCR carried out under the 2006 growth plan and a draft 9th line lands ROPA that was brought forward to council and for public consultation in October of 2017. The 9th line lands have a unique planning history and status. The 9th line lands reflect a regional and municipal boundary adjustment through annexation from Halton and Milton to Peel and Mississauga. At the time when the lands were annexed, Halton's official plan actually already included a policy framework for this area. It was identified as the 9th line corridor policy area. And the policies are very straightforward. It supports transit-oriented development. It supports protection of the proposed 407 transitway. And the policy framework came into effect in 2005, before the growth plan, a year before the growth plan. Section 510 of the Region of Peel's official plan notes that the Halton official plan policies apply to these lands until such time as a future ROPA brings the lands into the Peel official plan. Development of these lands would implement the 2031 forecast through redistribution of Mississauga's existing population and employment allocation. A letter from the provincial staff, which is on today's agenda, recognizes that due to the unique planning history and status of the 9th line lands process, it would be a local decision to move forward with a city-initiated, area-specific, local official plan amendment outside of a municipal comprehensive review. This path forward would include Mississauga proceeding with its official plan amendment on the basis of the unique planning history going back before the growth plan, and the existing reference in Halton's official plan to Section 510 of Peel's official plan applying to the 9th line lands. And since the Mississauga local official plan would be implementing existing land use policies associated with the Halton 9th line corridor policy and not a regional official plan settlement boundary expansion, the MCR process requirements of the growth plan would not apply. The technical work associated with settlement expansion under the growth plan has been completed and would be considered as input into a future regional MCR. While the lands are coming into the region under an old policy regime, Mississauga is aiming to achieve a higher standard, a much higher standard, in line with the standards and policies of the 2017 growth plan, such as meeting the growth plan targets, if not exceeding them actually, planning for complete communities, planning for transit-supported uses, planning for major transit station areas within the 9th line areas, undertaking watershed planning, understanding and implementing agricultural impacts and environmental planning, and most of all, planning for completion of that community, 9th line community. There are several components of the environment bundle that would now be required to be implemented also through the MCR based on the draft guidance. Natural heritage systems mapping as well as agriculture systems mapping must be refined through an MCR and used to inform growth management and settlement boundary expansion analysis. The region is also required to develop a stormwater master plan and water and wastewater master plans as part of overall watershed planning. 2 staff reports on today's agenda provide further information on these provincial mapping initiatives related to our environment bundle. So to recap, the 2017 growth plan and the current draft provincial guidance will require a significant revision to our official plan review, which is called Peel 2041, given the definition and scope of a municipal comprehensive review under the new growth plan and the draft guidance requiring implementation through one single amendment. It is the opinion of staff that a staged approach to implementation would achieve the same community building outcomes and in fact avoid some of the risk associated with prolonging the process through one amendment. We are concerned that implementation through a single amendment process would impede the timely implementation of community building policies and impact housing affordability, competitiveness of our region, infrastructure planning, and financing of growth. I'm now going to turn it over to Steve, who's going to provide an update on the impacts of the news planning realities and the growth management work. Steve.
Thank you, Arvin. Since 2013, the region has been undertaking an integrated approach to growth management that has involved comprehensive integration of land use, infrastructure, transportation, and financial planning, along with early and ongoing stakeholder consultation. On October 26, 2017, a report was brought to Council providing an update on the growth management strategy in each of these areas, and included 2 draft ROPAs that were targeted for Council approval in April of 2018, as well as an updated interim development charges bylaw that would have gone to Council for approval in July of this year. As Arvin has just shared, we now have new guidance from the province that has required us to reconsider all aspects of the growth management work program, in particular as a result of the MCR guidance and the provincial decision on the GTA West corridor. As you can see from our revised timeline for the growth management strategy, we anticipate having to revise the growth allocations by late 2018, in particular a revision of the employment by type and location. However, final allocations wouldn't be approved until the end of the MCR process. We will be revising the integrated employment and transportation strategy, as well as the transportation capital costing based on the revised growth allocations. The development charges bylaw would be revised based on the work above and the updated DC bylaw is currently targeted to be brought to Council in 2019. This would have an added benefit of being aligned with the 2019 DC bylaw updates planned by all 3 area municipalities. The component impacted most significantly will be the growth management ROPA, which, given the draft comprehensive guidelines, will be delayed or could be delayed until 2020 or beyond. Our next steps for staff are to comment on the provincial guidance documents, in particular to recommend a staged approach that would allow for timely implementation of certain policies that we've described today. We are continuing to work on other Peel 2041 focus areas, developing detailed scopes of work for the MCR requirements and all elements of the growth work plan. We are continuing to evaluate the GTA West on growth management while remaining engaged with stakeholders and the province to respond to any direction as it comes. We plan to report back to Council in late 2018 or early 2019 with updates on this work. Staff is also planning to hold a statutory public meeting in early 2019 on the growth management ROPA if the province revises the draft MCR guidance to allow a staged approach to implementing MCRs instead of the single amendment. So this concludes our report, and we're happy to take any questions.
Well, I think there's going to be a few. Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move receipt of the delegation, and I would like to move the recommendations contained in 8.2 and 8.3, and move receipt of the information reports on 8.4 and 8.5. And I just want to say...
just before you proceed, can we get a seconder to that? Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Moore.
I think staff have just done an enormous amount of work on this and over a short period of time. The changes, I think, are going to take a lot of us some time to get our heads around in terms of how it plays out, and with a provincial election on the horizon, you may have to do a bit of a sidestep as well. So I hope, we're all prepared to be nimble depending on that outcome. I want to thank the CAO for your comments. It was good advice in terms of how we approach these 4 reports and a really complex issue that's before us. So thank you very much for your comments. I don't have any specific questions. Maybe as we go through the line of speakers, I may come up with something, but I think the reports are very clearly written and really map out a logical and a measured approach to some of the changes that are before us. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Downey.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I actually was just on the board to second Councillor Moore, but I will speak to the process. I think that it's acknowledgement of staff for using the tools that they have available to them to carry on working towards complete communities in the region appeal is important. So I acknowledge that. The process, I'm sure, has been long and exhausting for all of you. As well, the reports are very well written and detailed. I've had all of my questions answered over the last month, so thank you for that. Yeah, I definitely support what you've put forward, so thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to say thank you as well to staff. You've done an excellent job. The reports are detailed. Unfortunately, the province came along and threw a couple of big wrenches in the entire process. And so I do have a couple of questions. And I guess, so I support the stage approach and asking the province to allow us the flexibility, because you talked about, Arvin, some of the impacts this will have on us as a region and also as a municipality. In terms of housing stock, I can tell you Bolton has 0. And so this certainly has an impact on us, I mean, as a whole, as a region as a whole. But I guess what I need to know is, and I don't know if we've done the financial impact that it will have on the region as a whole, because if we're expected to do all of these things as a single MCR, that's going to take years before you see anything in the ground, before you see any decisions made. So have we done a look at the financial impact?
Through the chair, the process, as you saw from my presentation, it's going to be lengthy. There are a lot of studies required. In my experience in dealing with these types of major policy initiatives, the costs will be substantial. Just in hiring consultants, and I mean, it can't all be done internally. You need technical expertise and so forth. So there will be a significant financial impact associated with doing the work. I suggest to you that there might be a greater financial impact in not being able to proceed with the community development and wishes of the area municipalities as we wait for this work to get done. And that is an area that I think that is of quite a concern with this work.
Yeah, that's a concern to me as well, because we know where you get revenues, it's either through taxes or development. So the other question I have is with regards to ROPA 30 and the new board that's in place, the LPAT. Are we under the old rules of the OMB with ROPA 30?
Through the chair, I'll ask for some legal assistance here, but as far as I'm aware, it's still the Ontario Municipal Board that's in charge of ROPA 30, and it is the rules that the Ontario Municipal Board operated under.
Okay, good. So the other thing, and I think Councillor Moore touched on that, we have a provincial election on June the 7th. And so right now, all of this stuff is draft at the province. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Right. So we have to submit our comments, I think, by May the 7th. And so that leaves...
It has been extended to June.
To June.
Now, so
right. So
it's
I guess
a little bit more time.
Right. So I guess the question I have is, we're going to do all this stuff, and the province comes along, we've done all this stuff, they come along, they change the rules, and then we're expected to do all these other things, and then a new government comes in, and then what?
Good question.
Right. So my point is, the province comes along every time. We've spent a lot of dollars, a lot of time putting our stuff together, doing our work, and it's costing us money. And I honestly don't think that, I think that all of this stuff is up in the air now, because I don't have a crystal ball to say what the new government's going to do and all these changes. So anyway, I want to thank you for all the work you've done. I certainly support asking for a staged approach, because I really think that having a single tier, a single MCR is going to have huge financial impacts on all of us. Tough decisions we will have to make as elected officials, because again, growth, revenues comes through those two streams. It's increasing taxes or growth. And if our hands are tied and the process is going to be that lengthy before you see any of those revenues coming in, then that's a problem, I think, for all of us. So anyway, those are my thoughts, and I guess we'll wait to see what happens after June the 7th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Thompson.
Thank you. Arvin, I guess this is your last time you're going to delegate council. Markham's gain, our loss, but thank you for what you've done for the Region Appeal over the years, and getting us where we needed through the Growth Committee. You've been terrific to work with, and I'm going to definitely miss you. Going forward, you know, with the Mayfield West, I heard Mr. Given's report, and I have to admit, you know, sometimes things can be unfair, and in this one has been an interesting situation. Reading your report and hearing your presentation, I will support the report and your presentation going forward. But the question I have to get back to with the sketches and the timelines that you have of all the stuff that now we've had, you know, I think when we started with council this term, I think we're all hoping to approve the ROPA right away, and here we are, we're going into another term. What I really hoping to do is, I know the provinces is until 2022 or 2023 that we have to have our official plans done. We really need to get this no later than midterm, this next term of council, because the local municipalities need to get their official plans done too. We cannot go through 4 years and not get this accomplished. I know we got a 5-year plan review and everything else, but I think we've been under this for a length of time, and we really need the cooperation of the Region Appeal to get theirs done as quickly as possible so we can get our local official plans and everything in, you know, together for the next term of council, because 2022 is going to come real quick, and we don't need to be going into another election platform on this. And I can tell you, I can see, you know, even in Caledon, this is all going to be about planning now for this election, and it's just because of the challenges we've been through. So I know where you're going. You were saying, you know, 2019, 2020, is that really our goal, I guess, is my question.
Yeah.
The whole growth strategy.
Yeah, from the growth strategy plan, we have to back up, we have to be in compliance by 2022. We have to back up 300 days, so it has to be at this council by probably no later than 2020.
Okay.
So,
is that a commitment we think we can keep at this point?
Well, based on all the other pieces that we have to get in place, we're, you know, we have those timelines that we have to meet, so, you know, I don't think we have much of a choice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Crombie.
Thank you. And I just wanted to thank the staff for all their work as well, and to Arvin, to you, and thank you for all you've done. And I guess this is your swan song, as Alan has said, so thank you for your work. Just for clarification, so the Mayfield West, the stage 2, the part 2, is that included in all these recommendations?
Through the chair, so the Mayfield West stage 2, phase 2, was part of the original growth management ROPA that was brought forward in February, the draft to council. It continues to be one that we support to move forward, but what we're saying is we cannot support it as an independent standalone ROPA because of the MCR guidance and everything else. That's, the world's changed.
Correct.
So it needs to, we need to get the land budget methodology done. The MCR has to, you know, the 2041 growth has to be done in a way that allows this to go forward. Now, having said that, that was always our plan. Our plan was always to have a ROPA, a growth of ROPA that had the Mayfield West in it. So that, our plans have not changed, right? But what we're saying is with all this provincial direction and change, it's going to take longer, right? But the province is now saying that you can only do one ROPA. for your entire MCR. So not only has the province initiated all these guidance documents, what they're saying is the scope of that ROPA has to be much greater than what we would have had in the past, which delays the timelines. So we're saying to the province, allow us to continue on the path of having a staged ROPA to allow community building to continue to happen in Peel. And that's the real message.
Okay, that sounds good, because otherwise we'd want to separate that out and vote on it separately. Thank you. We took a position yesterday at the City of Mississauga, but I believe it's consistent. Thanks.
Councillor Parrish.
Yes, thank you very much, and congratulations on your moving and becoming a head of a department. I think you're going to do a great job. When I was reading all this, I can remember back in 2010, 2011, when we were having the great debate over option 6 and all the rest of it. One of the things I looked at was the history of the creation of regional government. And one of the primary reasons Bill Davis brought in regional government was to have complete planning for a whole region so that it's logical, and to have the financial implications run through all the parts of the region. So I think the staff down at Queen's Park is going back to that original plan. And I'm not particularly concerned that if the government changes, the staff underneath that government's going to change. And I think what they are doing is going back to the type of planning that says every part of the region has to agree with what's going on, and it has to be financially reasonable. And this is actually the purpose of regional government. So I don't think it's going to change. I just want to support this. I also would like to tell you that we have started to take it very seriously at Mississauga, in that our new commissioner has assigned somebody to look at all the stuff coming through here. It's very extensive. It's very complicated. And some of us sort of, our eyes glaze over, so we're trusting our staff and you and whoever replaces you to give us good guidance on this stuff. So thank you very much. It was very complicated. I'm glad we waited 2 weeks, because we all had an opportunity to read it. And instead of flying off the handle and reading things into it, we've all done this quite calmly. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Arvin, to you and your staff. This has been yeoman's work to try and navigate a shifting landscape, so I appreciate that you've tried to be as fulsome in your response, and the reports were very helpful, and I'm glad, truly I'm glad we had more time. We as a city actually put a motion on the agenda last meeting, and it was in the correspondence, but I feel some obligation to talk about that today, just because I think, although I'm very supportive of these reports, I think I need to speak on this on behalf of the City of Brampton. We spent some time debating about what the growth plans would mean to our city, and essentially passed a motion that talked about the challenges of an integrated growth management plan and what kind of impact it would have on the City of Brampton. And certainly, I think we're very supportive of a staged approach and working with our partners to make sure that it is a growth plan that works for the whole region. But what I did want to just at least put on the record is the fact that we as a council, and in the City of Brampton, things are changing for us rapidly. So if you were watching the news last week, we were the recipient of some wonderful news about Ryerson University coming and having a campus for Ryerson outside of the City of Toronto is pretty enormous. So we're really excited, and we know why they chose Brampton. They know that Brampton's growing very rapidly. That's their future student base, and certainly we're projected to grow to close to 1 million people by 2041. As a city, we're located on the Super Innovation Corridor, and we're part of the Pearson Employment Mega Hub. And of course, we were part, along with the City of Mississauga, in the Amazon H2Q bid, because they recognize that Brampton and Mississauga and those cities around the City of Toronto are all part of where the skilled talent pool is going to come for the employers that we all seek to attract. We know that currently our balance of jobs to people in Brampton is not at the level we would like it to be, but we're trying to change that. and we want to protect our current supply of employment lands in order to increase our activity rate from 33%, or approximately 37%, up to higher than that, maybe 41. As mayor, I want to see business grow and prosper, but I'm concerned that without a plan to protect employment lands in Brampton, we're going to risk our future prosperity. Since the 80s, successive councils have usually agreed when asked to convert large tracts of commercial industrial lands into residential housing in Brampton. And over the last decade, Brampton's employment lands have shrunk significantly, replaced by sprawling residential neighborhoods. And these decisions have impaired our ability to compete. As the mayor of Brampton, I believe it's in our best interest to retain as much of the city's remaining employment lands for business and economic activities, as well as to promote a smart, intensified form of development. So I and my council are fully committed to protecting the existing supply of employment lands and to ensure we have adequate lands to serve our long-term employment forecasts. Our city needs every square inch of unused employment lands to attract more economic development opportunities, which we think ultimately will help us achieve a better proportion of residential employment balance. With the many opportunities we have on our doorstep in Peel, now is the time to create great places and a sense of community that our residents expect us to deliver. We heard loud and clear from our extensive community outreach program over the last year, people want to live, work, and play right in their own city. We need to be open to creating smart spaces and reimagining our city and our region so that we can excel and create an environment that brings talent to our communities. Frankly, I think it would be reckless to consider changing or lowering the forecasts in Brampton. If we did, it would have a significant negative financial implication on our planning. Lowering our numbers would mean a risk to reducing our development charges program and potentially result in not having enough planned and future infrastructure to accommodate our city's future growth. If we agreed to lower our population and employment numbers, it would impact on our existing service levels. It would shift additional costs to the current tax base and result in inadequate infrastructure. Lowering our population and employment numbers would impact on planned social and healthcare programming from other levels of government. Our LINs use forecasts for planning and service delivery. Brampton has been fighting for decades for our fair share, and when it comes to healthcare funding, we need it to better match our population growth. If we lower our forecasts, then it will negatively impact planned funding for our city from the provincial and federal governments. Therefore, we as a council have agreed that the City of Brampton will continue to work with the region to ensure that this important work continues to progress in a coordinated, staged approach. And we have also agreed that it's critical that our draft population and employment forecasts not be reduced during the review. Brampton, we believe, is poised to become a global leader. We have a lot of strategic initiatives, and now is not the time to tamper with or reduce our population or employment forecasts. So I want to make that clear that I'm happy to support the recommendation, but again, we as a council have agreed that this is a priority for us. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sprovieri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Marvin, thank you for the presentation. Before I just make a few comments, can you go back to page 12 of your presentation? Just an observation I made. I'd like to have a question on that. Can you tell us why you wouldn't have a major transportation station right in the center there around Britannia or 401 in Mississauga?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we worked with Mississauga staff in working towards identifying these initial major transit station areas. As I've mentioned before, a substantial amount of work is still required to get that to get us to a point where we can actually delineate them in our official plan. But this is just our initial and work with the municipalities that is showing.
Sure, and appreciate that. Just thought that's a major Mississauga center, and I would think it would make sense to include one in that area also. I would think, just from when you look at the map, it kind of tells you that's where one is needed. So the other points I'd like to make through the chair is that I totally agree with you about the staged approach, and especially since we really don't, and maybe you comment on this, we really don't have a crystal ball as to whether we're going to achieve our employment targets. Unless things turn around and a new trend comes along with manufacturing coming back into North America. And I don't know whether those numbers were projected based on a healthy industrial manufacturing growth happening, or whether or how those numbers came about. But certainly that is a concern that we need to make sure we have the jobs for the people coming in. And with a staged approach, I think we can manage that better than trying to do it all at once, and not knowing what's going to happen down the line, 20 years, 25 years down the line. So totally agree with your approach, the staged approach. And also I'd like to just comment on our mayor's comments about Brampton converting employment lands to residential. And that's true. I remember in 1991 when I first got on council, our biggest conversion was the Brampton Bricklands, which were all planned for industrial. The roads were in, everything was there, and lo and behold, we had this guy, his name was Gary Stam, and he was supposed to be a guru of some kind of guru, and he said, oh yeah, you can convert those lands to residential because you got too much employment land in Brampton. I remember that and I remember I nicknamed him Gary Scam when that happened, because now we know it was the worst thing we did, to have converted any employment lands to residential. So I know that Mayor, that was in Hard Lake too, and that was a huge mistake. And I appreciate the mayor really putting her foot down now, saying that no more, and agree with that totally. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Innes.
Thank you, and thank you, Arvin, very much for, I know this has been a very complex issue and lots of moving parts, and you've done a great job in preparing council, and wish you all the best in your future endeavors. I think that C.A. Schwartz made a very valid point that this is really about providing our comments back to the province on their draft guidelines. And Councillor Groves raised a very important part, which was with regards to the cost of doing it the way that they've proposed it versus the way that we're suggesting it be done. And I think learning from our past experiences, most recently, the Region of Peel stood very united with all of the other regions across the province during the 4 plans review and the comments that we gave back with our concerns. And unfortunately, it fell upon deaf ears. So I think that depending on how staff feel about it, I think that it would be beneficial to include some sort of supplementary information to the province should council endorse staff's recommendation today, which I fully support, that information is conveyed to them, not only about the cost of doing it the 2 different ways, but most importantly to the region is the building of complete communities. So that's something that we've all strived to aim towards. It's something that the province has asked us to do, and yet their guidelines that they are suggesting we implement do just the opposite of that. So I think that having that information presented to them in support to show them the cost. There is only one taxpayer, so let's break down the financial burden to the municipalities, the region, and the province, but also to show them that the complete communities aspect of it is most important to us, because they say that it's important to them as well. So thank you very much for your effort, and if that could be added to that recommendation, I think that would go a long way in supporting our council's position at the province. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Miles.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you call the question, please?
I need a seconder. Second. Then that would be a recorded vote to call the question. Well,
just one person, one topic.
Okay. There's a motion on the floor.
No, that's all next week. Yeah, exactly. No, I'm thinking, I'll call the marker.
I'm going to allow Councillor Parrish to speak.
I could have spoken
I didn't see.
because I'm addressing 9.4. And as Mayor Crombie pointed out, our staff and our council supports the staged implementation, and we support all the report. But we definitely did not support any special relief for Mayfield West Stage 2. And in Arvin's words on page 8.36, this new policy context prevents settlement expansion using 2041 growth forecasts such as Mayfield West. On 9.4, there's correspondence going back and forth between you as chair of the region and the ministry, which asks for relief in Mayfield. My question would be to you, if all this passes and we listen to what Arvin has suggested, will you continue this correspondence or will you stop writing back and forth?
What's that? Yeah, I'd have to take the advice of our planners to follow the procedure with respect to the regulations that they've set out.
Our planner has said today that we will not be asking for special relief there. So if you're following our planner, then I assume there will be no more correspondence?
That's fair.
For us. So why are we speaking to an item on the agenda that is not currently before us? Should we not be discussing this when we get to 9.4?
Well, it does involve our vote on this particular
It is
motion.
before us.
It is.
I
It's
thought it was
before us.
8.3,
No, we go
4,
right to
5 that are before
9.7.
us.
No, I did 8 excuse me, since I made the motions, Mr. Chairman, I moved to receive the delegation, approval of the recommendations in 8.2 and 8.3, and receive.
Exactly. It's all on the table.
So 9.4 is technically not before us at this moment.
Okay.
I just procedurally, I think that we should follow the procedure bylaw.
And I'm glad you're as sharp as you are on procedure. I still want a clarification before I vote on this motion to make sure that we're not going against what was recommended by our staff and that we are voting appropriately on this motion. So I need an answer, maybe from Arvin.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, could I ask the councillor to restate state the question one more time, and I'll provide an answer.
Okay, I'm going to quote back your own words. This new policy context prevents settlement expansion using 2041 growth forecasts, such as Mayfield West Phase 2, Stage 2, from proceeding independently.
That is correct.
That is your position, and it won't change.
No, that is correct. That is the requirement of the growth plan.
So if I am to vote on this intelligently, I will vote knowing that Mayfield West does not get any special treatment.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we're not proposing any special treatment for Mayfield West. It was part of the original growth amendment. We propose it to be part of the amendment that we bring back, but there's work to be done to get us there.
Thank you, Arvin. Thank you. And when we get to 9.4, I will ask the chairman the question again.
All right. So the motion, oh, sorry, Jeanette, did you have a comment?
I think this will help for clarification. So through the chair, that letter on the communication relates to Mayfield West Stage 1, which is already approved as part of ROPA 24, right? So it doesn't relate to the new growth plan, Phase 2, Stage 2. And I've got the technical expert here if you want clarification.
Councillor Sporvia, the question's been called.
That's fine. It's okay. I'll ask.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, no, it did fail because I allowed her to speak. Go ahead.
Just a point of clarification on this comment about special treatment. In the presentation, I heard that these lands in question were already in the works, were already in the mix. So I don't know where the special treatment issue arose. And is that the same as, say, the Line 9, the lands in Mississauga? Did they get special treatment, or were they in the mix also? Just to clarify the issue.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, no special treatment, first of all. The Mayfield West lands have a long planning history. They were part of the MCR that was done for the Phase 2 lands, but they were excluded from the urban area and our official plan because of the numbers and the math that we had to make work as part of the 2031 forecast.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Miles.
Call the question, please.
We just voted on that, and I allowed her to speak. Do you want to take another vote on calling the question?
Well, you've had two speakers now. Whether can we call the question again?
Yeah, because that was, yeah, we can call it again. So I need a seconder. Okay, it's been seconded, recorded vote.
Just a second.
To call the question, but, correct.
Call the question.
It passes.
Where's the love? Where's the love?
All right, the motion before us then is first to move, it's been moved receipt of the the presentation, and then to move 8.2, 8.3, which will require, all of this will require a recorded vote, and then 8.4 and 8.5 is for information. I believe that's what's been moved by Councillor Moore and seconded by Councillor Gibson. So if you'd please vote.
50%.
That carries. So that moves us to communications 9.1 to 9.8. If someone would like to move that. Moved by Mayor Thompson. Do I have a seconder? Second by Councillor Moore. All those in favor? Oh, Councillor Paris, sorry.
No, I'm not calling the question. I'm not arguing with Jeanette because she's my hero. But when you look at the response to you, Chair Dale, it says, I appreciate your comments to find ways to expedite the review of the Mayfield West Phase 2 development. And then you go on and talk about, in your original letter, a link to the nearest 410 interchange not being possible. So I'm just asking you again, are we just going to stop the communication, or are we going to concentrate on the 410, or what are you going to do in your communication?
Well, in all honesty, that was done before they changed the regulations again.
Yeah, I understand that.
And
I'm just clarifying.
I'll comply with whatever regulations the province puts before us.
You're a good man. Thank you.
All right. Oh, Mayor Thompson, sorry.
I'm sorry, Councillor Parrish is taking a personal thing on Mayfield West, but this has got nothing to do with it. This has been along with Phase 1 and Phase 2. This part of the corridor was froze by the Provincial Highway Corridor, which has now been released by the province. So now we've been holding up on our planning and our studies. We now need the province to finish it. That's what this is all about. We knew we were coming up to an election. We just wanted basically the commitment from the province that just because there's an election, the work can still move forward. And that's all that's about. It's got nothing to do with more growth or whatever. It's just standard practice. That's all it is.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. What's that? No, just there's a motion before us for receipt of the communications. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. Moves us to items related to enterprise programs and services. I believe all have been dealt with except for 10.1, which is a presentation. So, Norm Lum, if you'd come forward. Yeah, please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good morning, Chair Dale and Regional Council. Norm and I are pleased to be here today to share with you updates on the Peel economy and the region's long-term financial condition. I will begin with the presentation on the economy. Peel's economy continues to change in response to a rapidly changing macroeconomic environment, and further changes are likely given trade uncertainties and also given that changes in some business cycle indicators suggest that we are approaching the end of the current business cycle. We are also poised to enter a higher inflation and interest rate environment in which both private and public sector debt are high and in some cases increasing. The region of Peel faces the risk of higher cost for some goods and services as inflation inches higher. However, higher interest rate will only impact the region if there is new borrowing at higher interest rate. In the local economy, growth continued. At the broadest level, Peel's population continued to grow, reaching 1.48 million persons in 2017. More Peel residents entered the labor market in search of work, many of whom were successful in finding employment, and as a result, in 2017, Peel's unemployment rate fell to a 6-year low of 6.9%. Unemployment rates were lower for both youth, 15 to 24 years old, and adults, 25 years and over, although youth unemployment rate is yet to return to pre-2007 levels. As Peel labor market grows, it is also aging, as an increasing proportion of our growing seniors population have remained in the labor market. Similar trends are observed at the national level. The presence of seniors in the labor market offers the opportunity for mentorship and talent retention, but also elevates the need for ongoing training to support productivity gains from new technologies. Other labor market shifts continued, including the general shift from higher paying the goods producing sector to services, and also towards more precarious employment. As shown on this slide, self-employment, temporary and part-time employment led growth in 2017, while the more desirable full-time and permanent employment opportunities fell. These changes continue to point to the lingering risk of low income in Peel and higher demand for some regional services. The shift towards low income in Peel has been observed over the past 3 decades. This slide shows the distribution of income earners in Peel, and it is taken from a study conducted by the United Way of Toronto and York Region. The shift in income between 2000 and 2015 is particularly stark and occurred during the long-term trending down of manufacturing employment. The 2007-2008 recession also fell in that period. Peel business sector has also grown, while some trends have continued. Measured by employment size, growth has been led by small and medium-sized businesses employing less than 500 persons. You have been provided with an updated page of the economic bulletin. We caught a clerical error in the business bankruptcy data and have made the corrections. While Peel's business sector continued to grow, the number of business bankruptcies in Peel have trended downwards since the recession. The business sector is now facing another change in the economic environment, one in which inflation and interest rates are higher than current levels. This will likely create a higher cost environment for businesses. Ontario businesses will also face higher costs from new legislations, which were put in place in 2018. Cap and trade legislation will likely mean higher costs for some businesses, but will have significant positive environmental effects and create new business opportunities in the medium to long run. This slide presents information on Peel's housing resale market, which has stabilized since the new measures were put in place in April 2017. Average prices have retreated from peak levels recorded in April. However, annual average price continued to rise, and as such, housing unaffordability risks remain elevated. In conclusion, the observed trends, as shown on this slide, will likely present long-term challenges for the region. However, Peel is positioned to be flexible in adapting to the changing environment while supporting a growing Peel economy. A number of strategies are currently being implemented to ensure the region remains prepared to manage through these changes. These include the long-term financial planning strategy, which provide a robust framework which support the region's long-term financial flexibility and sustainability. And Norm will speak to these in more details. Norm.
Thanks, Judith. So the strategy supports decisions that Council makes on key strategies, policies, and initiatives. And it accomplishes this using 3 pillars of financial sustainability, as well as through 9 financial principles. We assess our overall financial condition using key indicators that I'll walk you through over the next few slides. The first financial pillar looks at Peel's ability to maintain services and infrastructure without resorting to unplanned increases to tax and utility rates or disruptive cuts to services. To ensure that we demonstrate respect for the tax and utility rate payer, we try to keep increases in line with inflation. Council provided a target net tax levy increase of 2.4% for the 2019 budget, within the target range of 1 to 3%. And as Judith mentioned in her presentation, Peel's population is growing and aging. It is also approaching the end of an economic cycle. These trends will put additional pressure on Peel's services and its ability to keep property taxes affordable for residents and businesses. Oops. Included in the 2019 target are recommendations to continue the infrastructure levies for tax and utility rate programs to ensure that the capital plan is sustainable. Peel has over $26 billion in assets which continue to age each and every year. To provide funding for their state of good repair, sufficient capital reserves need to be put in place. The fourth indicator for sustainability looks at how satisfied residents are with Peel services. Based on the 2017 GTA Focus Survey, Peel received a score of 75%. The second financial pillar looks at vulnerability, or how dependent Peel is on external funding sources. A key principle for this pillar is to have users pay for services where appropriate. For an indicator, Peel reviews its development charges on a regular basis to see if an increase of over 20% is required. And currently, no DC background study has been initiated as the forecasted DC increase is less than 20%. With respect to overall funding, 44% of Peel's 2018 budgeted expenditures are funded by property taxes. Looking at this the other way, 56% of Peel services are funded by user fees and external funding. Therefore, any reductions in provincial funding would put additional pressure on the net tax levy. And looking at property taxes a little closer, the proportion coming from industrial commercial has declined steadily over the past 10 years. This means that residents are bearing an increasing proportion of the cost for services. With the changing nature of employment and the move towards service-based businesses from manufacturing, the decline in property taxes from industrial commercial is expected to continue. Another area where additional revenue can be generated is through investment. Municipal investment is heavily regulated and bound by legislation and policies, so it is critical that Peel remains 100% compliant. Going forward, with Peel becoming a prudent investor, we will look to achieve higher returns on investment. This will help take some pressure off the tax base and on the capital reserves. The third and final pillar is flexibility, which represents Peel's financial ability to adapt to evolving environmental conditions such as rising inflation, increasing interest rates, and the changing nature of employment. A key tool that is used to help mitigate volatility in tax and utility rate increases is the Rate Stabilization Reserve, or Working Fund Reserve. The reserves for both tax and utility are in healthy states, which provide Peel flexibility to weather the impact of changing conditions. It also allows Council room to address priority areas. For example, 2 weeks ago, Council approved the allocation of the 2017 surplus to reduce the debt required for the Seniors Health and Wellness Village. Reducing the use of forecasted debt also provides additional flexibility to use as financing for other priorities such as waste diversion and affordable housing. Currently, Peel's debt-to-revenue ratio is 8.1%, well below the 25% limit allowed under the Municipal Act. However, as Judith mentioned earlier, the rising interest rates will mean new debt will have higher borrowing costs, but this will not impact existing debt. So to summarize, Peel's on track for 9 of the 12 performance indicators with recommended actions for the remaining 3 indicators. Peel remains one of the few municipalities with a AAA credit rating, and residents are generally satisfied with the services provided by Peel. And with respect to Peel's overall financial condition, we are currently well positioned to address future challenges as Council's decisions have allowed Peel to remain financially flexible. So to ensure that Peel's long-term financial strategy continues to be relevant with our evolving environment, staff are undertaking a refresh of the strategy with a focus on updating financial indicators. We will also assess the socioeconomic impact of the changing nature of employment on Peel's services. We are looking to have an updated strategy and financial condition scorecard to present for Council's consideration in 2019. To close my presentation, I'm happy to inform Council that Peel's AAA credit rating was reaffirmed, so again, it remains one of the few municipalities that have that rating. So thank you, and now Judith and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Mayor Thompson.
I'm really glad you gave the presentation, because when I read it through, I didn't get the impact that you brought to it. So thank you so much. And to me, I think this really tells just how proactive the Region of Peel is and looking forward. And I think this is the huge issue that I think a lot of us need to look at is it isn't just what's happening today, what's happening to us 10 years and 20 years down the road. And that's how the Region of Peel got started. And I'm so glad to see that you've used the latest technology and everything to, and what you do with the data is amazing. And I want to thank both of you for a fine presentation. And first of all, I want to say, well done.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Starr.
Yeah, it's a great report, and I have to agree with the mayor that when you take a look at it and try to read it and decipher it on your own, you almost have to have a presentation. So the thing that caught my attention is, I think you were back around 10 or 11 on the slides, and you said we're at the end of an economic cycle. Well, can you clarify that?
I will. Through you, Mr. Chair. Based on leading indicators prepared by the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, which is over 30 countries, mostly developed countries, they have come out with 2 indicators. I think one is on your bulletin. I'll tell you which page it's on. It's on the last page. And this one looks at the Global Real Price Index. And they follow this indicator to see how it's a precursor to the end of a cycle. And where we are where we were in 2016 suggests that we are almost at the end of this cycle. That's one. They have another indicator, which was not presented here, which is the difference between your accumulation of capital, private capital, and your debt. And in economic theory, they should be going in sync. Now there is a gap between both where the debt accumulation is more than capital. So they use that as an indicator also. The third one is that since they have started looking at economic cycle, the average length of a cycle is about 58 months. 2 times it has reached over 100 months. And we are now in the 3rd period where the economic expansion is over that amount of months. So because of that, all major economic organizations are pointing to the end of this cycle and probably the beginning of another.
Okay, so then realizing that's more global, and where the curves are, where do we fit in there? Are we mirroring that exactly, or being the, I guess, a very vibrant region that we have? Are we above that? Or are we going to be straight in line with the overall global averages?
Peel continues to grow. Canada continues to grow. And in fact, Canada's economy is estimated to be at its capacity. And this is why they expect inflation to rise and interest rate to increase. So no, Peel is not in that cycle where there is any lead indicator to say that there's going to be the end of our economic cycle. And in addition to that, the fact that there is the tax reform in the US as well as planned expansion in expenditure, the growth in the US economy is expected to last a little longer. So I can't say that Peel is in any position to be at the end of its cycle. We are still growing as an economy.
I was going to say that's a typical economist answer. Anyway, and the other point I picked up on, I think it was towards the end, where there was a satisfaction of 75%. I thought we were a lot higher than that.
Oh, through the chair. The last survey you may have seen was based on the 2015 GTA Focus Survey, and we were at 77%. And this one's based on the 2017, where we're at 75%.
Oh, okay. I just had the impression that we were quite a bit higher.
David, if you'd like to make a comment.
Yeah, you may be remembering, Councillor Starr, through you, Mr. Chair, the survey that we do ourselves every 2 years on satisfaction with our, I think it's about 22 lines of business. So when we go out to our direct users and ask them,
that's right,
we're in the 80s. This is a GTA focus, which is a broader survey.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies it. Thank you. Good report.
All right, thank you. Mayor Jeffrey.
These reports are so information dense. I'm really glad you talk, because it helps me understand or know what I don't know. And one of the things, Mr. Lummi, you talked about, I think it was on page 12, and you were talking about provincial participation in funding. I can't remember the word exactly, but essentially what I want to talk about and perhaps alert people to is a lot of the assumptions we make are that our provincial partners will continue to be at the table, particularly in light of uploading. So we as a community were downloaded for a very long time, and then the province turned that around and started uploading. And what concerns me is I don't know that that will continue, and that's part of our assumptions. So I guess one issue I can tell you specifically that for those of us that sit on the Police Services Board, we were told that the costs for transportation of the prisoners would be, the costs would be uploaded by the province. In fact, it's never met the required number of dollars that we actually need, and it's about to end. So I worry, just like the assumptions we make from a planning perspective, whether on land use planning, we make a lot of assumptions that we will continue on that path that the province started with regards to uploading. But I actually am not, I feel quite nervous, and I know that mayors actually across Ontario are anxious about whether those commitments to upload what were unfairly downloaded to municipalities will continue. Do you have any sense of how that would impact, and I know I'm asking you a really loaded question, how it would impact some of the assumptions you've made about our financial stability?
Just for some, through the chair, some context. So when I mentioned earlier that 56% of Peel's expenditures are funded through user fees and external funding, 26% of that is, of the overall bucket, is from the province and the Fed. So about $624 million is from the province. So any reduction that we would have on that funding would put pressure. I can't quantify what that would be, not knowing how much they would reduce it by.
It's just, I guess the challenge is when I hear that there will be efficiencies found. I just, having been on the receiving end of efficiencies previously, I mean, there's really only 3 places that we can go as municipal councillors. We can go to the taxpayer, we can go to user fees, and we get anything else from other levels of government. So we're really at the mercy, and to me, the unknown is the part that really worries me, considering the volume of what we are able to achieve here at the region and certainly at our respective cities. So I actually think this is going to be an issue that we will want to be talking about, because there's really only 2 places you can find efficiencies. There's only 2 big buckets at the province. One is education, and the other is healthcare. And we all represent high-growth communities that rely on those services being provided, and we've, in the case of our LHIN, we're the lowest funded in the province of Ontario. So I'm nervous. So I would say that this is something we as a region should really be watching and asking those who want to represent us if they're going to be tinkering with the uploading. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could have a motion by Mayor Thompson, second by Councillor Starr for receipt first of the presentation and then of the report. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Items related to public works have been dealt with, I believe. Items related to health, Councillor Moore, if you take this section, please. Councillor Moore?
Oh, I'm terribly sorry.
Sorry, it's items 14.1 and 14.2,
Yep.
I believe.
Thank you. I was waiting for you to go through all those other items that were, so the first item, members of council, is item 14.1. It's not in consent. It's the Smile with Confidence pilot adult dental program. Councillor Sprovieri.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I pulled this item because in the report highlights, staff, it was very impressive, actually, that staff indicated after a 6-month treatment was completed for people on social benefits, participating in Ontario Works clients reported significant improvements in oral health and confidence, thus removing or reducing the oral health barriers and employability. That's really a good news story. That people who don't have dental health programs really benefit from these programs. And the reason I pulled this is that, as you know, the Liberal government has announced that if they get elected, they will introduce dental health as to the whole population, which is a great initiative. And I'm hoping that other parties will also carry through in case the Liberals don't get elected, that the other parties will follow through. So I would like to just propose that we send a motion to the other parties that since having dental care and it's so essential to the people who don't have it, which I believe, and Doctor, you can talk to, I believe that Dr. Hart, the minister, talked about how people with poor dental health actually affects their health overall. Maybe can you speak to that through the chair?
Through the chair. Yes, so with respect to dental health, the mouth is a really important part of the body, and we know that people with gum disease suffer certainly from confidence issues. So people who don't have nice smiles, it makes it harder for them to do things like seek work and be social. It also can lead to chronic health diseases such as heart attacks as well, respiratory infections along with that, and poor nutrition, because if your teeth aren't in good shape, it can make it very hard to eat healthy food as well. So the mouth is a very important part of the body and does impact overall health.
Okay. So through the chair, I would like to propose a motion that we, given the importance of good oral health, that we're asking other political parties to also consider in making dental care part of the normal health programs in Ontario. So I'd like to move that motion to that effect. So we send this to the Conservatives and NDP, and I believe it's a very, and just this 6-month trial really backs up the importance and the effectiveness of giving people the program, and so I'd like to make that motion, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you, and I'm assuming you don't have something written out.
No, it's very simple. Yeah.
It's very simple that
Yeah.
staff be directed to explore opportunities for advocacy for continuing through with this. Yeah. Thank you. David Swart?
Yeah, Madam Chair, perhaps what we can do is just have a motion that this report be forwarded to the four major parties running for election in Ontario, with a recommendation that they consider a dental program which we can describe as part of their platform.
Does that get the job done for you, Councillor Sprovier?
Yeah.
Okay. That motion's on the floor. All those in favor? Need a seconder. Councillor Downey has seconded that. Is this a recorded vote, Madam Clerk? Yes, it is. Thank you. Councillor Miles? And that motion carries. Thank you. The next item, Councillor Sprovier, you asked to be held as well. That's the 2017 Children's Oral Health Annual Report.
Yes, I did, Madam Chair, and the reason I pulled this because of the actually it was motivated by Councillor Parrish's request back a couple of weeks ago about what's happening in Malton with the children there, and just before I make my comment, can the staff? It's not in the report of how much funding the province actually provides to Peel Region for the various programs that we have, like the for the children that for dental care. Do we have a number?
Is that something that if you don't have it at your fingertips, you can provide it?
Sure.
So through the chair, yes, we can get that. We don't have it at our fingertips. I will say that the Healthy Smiles Ontario program is 100% funded by the province.
Right, and it'd just be interesting to see how much we spend. And through the chair, the other point, I believe I raised this in the past, and I came across what's happening in Scotland with their program. I think it's called Child Smile. And I don't know if staff ever really looked into what's happening in Scotland, where they've gone from probably being the worst with dental problems in Britain to the best with their program. And given that, you know, we have a problem in some areas of Peel, especially Malton, where whatever we've been doing hasn't really worked well. I wonder if staff can look into the Scottish program and see, and you know, to me, it's, I have a picture here of the little children at the schools. Every morning they brush their teeth, and they're given a toothbrush, and they're given, and they're taught how to brush their teeth, which I believe is really the number one way of preventing cavities. After a meal, you need to brush. So I would like to move as staff look into that and report back to see whether it's something that we could look at getting into, the similar program, because it's, from what I read, it's really done wonders in Scotland, and it's really worked well. So I'd like to move that, Madam Chair, through you.
Okay. Is that something that requires a motion, or that staff could take direction to do the, it's whatever you're comfortable with, Councillor Sparvieri?
Yeah, as long as we get it back, you know, let staff reports back in a timely fashion, it would be great.
Do that. So Councillor Sparvieri's moved that staff gather some information on the Scottish program and report back to council.
Right.
All those in favor? Oh, I need a, and I need a seconder. Councillor Groves. And that's a recorded vote for everybody. And that motion carries as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that ends all of the items under health, and I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. I believe we've dealt with all items related to human services, so it takes us down to bylaws. Bylaw moved by Councillor Mahoney, seconded by Councillor Kovac, that the bylaws listed on the Regional Council agenda being bylaws 24-2018 to 27-2018 inclusive be given the required number of readings, taken as read, signed by the regional chair and the regional clerk, and the corporate seal be affixed thereto. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. In camera, is it council's wish to move into camera, or would somebody move the reports? Sorry. If you read your agenda, they're in there.
I know, but I don't see anything that's really cowardice. That's what I'm just.
Well, no, I'm just asking if we don't move in, if somebody moved the reports. Okay, moved by Councillor Mahoney, seconded by Mayor Thompson. All those in favor? Oh, yeah, recorded vote, sorry. That carries, so bylaw to confirm. Moved by Councillor Ennis, seconded by Councillor Kovac, that bylaw 28-2018 to confirm the proceedings of the Regional Council at its meeting held on April 26, 2018, and to authorize the execution of documents in accordance with the Region Appeal bylaws related thereto, be given the required number of readings, taken as read, signed by the regional chair and the regional clerk, and the corporate seal be affixed thereto. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Moved by Councillor Paris, seconded by Councillor Palashi, we're adjourned. Motion, all in favor. Carried.